How would you like to make your first million? And today we have Joshua with us, and he's a leading expert in interpersonal synchrony, the art and science of how people get in sync and how it can be leveraged for trust, connection, and the most important, high performance relationship in business and life. So Joshua, tell us, what are the 5 steps they recommend entrepreneurs in order to make the first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
Yes, Aaron, it's a pleasure to be with you. So those 5 first steps, I would say step number 1, find a problem that you have faced so that you've got personal experience with it. Step number 2, research how many people face a similar problem to that one so you can get a sense of the market size and the market demand. Number 3, talk to people in that potential audience. Find out, validate, is this really a pressing concern? You might, during that period of time in your revise exactly what you're going to solve for this audience. Step number 4, create a very low cost, minimum viable product that you can use to start to see if it's addressing the concern that the audience has. And number 5, iterate based on the feedback that you get with that audience. So keep a very close loop with the audience that you're serving, and constant iteration will get you down that path.
Strategic partnership, one of the biggest, most powerful ways to scale and grow a company, because you will find someone that have your same client and so your same market but doesn't compete with you. So you can create a strategic partnership. But in order to do that, sometimes relationships are key. Some if you share with me when you have been doing some venture capitalist activities, and when you are looking, you have a startup company. Sometimes the partners are so big, right? And you are just a tiny company, and in that point, a relationship play the key. So, what do you think that is positive, or that can be applied in the human psychology of building and nurture relationships in order to attract this idea of partners that can scale our business?
Sure. Well, as you and I were talking offline, everything in life comes down to relationships, right? It's all
Yes, one
about
of the
that
biggest
human connection.
biggest markets in the personal development. There is finance, relationships, and health. These are the big the one of the 3 big niches.
They're huge markets, and they're really the foundation of the other markets in many ways as
Mm-hmm.
well. So to
Mm-hmm.
your question about, let's say, strategic partnerships, let's assume for a moment that you've gone through those 5 steps we mentioned, and you've got a viable product, and now you're looking to scale it out, right? One thing that underpins all of this is what I call human technologies. So we have in us the ability to create very quick and deep, meaningful connections with other people. And that's what we call interpersonal synchrony, or getting in sync. So I'm sure, Harry, you've had an experience where you have met someone and it just clicked, right?
Very often.
Right. And that's an amazing feeling, right? We've all experienced it. And it seems so natural to us because it's what our brains and bodies want to do. So, right now, as you and I are talking, and even as the audience is watching and listening here, our brains are trying to connect up with one another. And when we do that, we trust the other person. We want to do business together with the other person. And so let's take the context of strategic partnerships. Your goal as an entrepreneur is really simple. It's to get in sync with the person on the other side of the table or the other person in the room, because that foundation has to be there before you will create a partnership, before you'll sign a contract, before you'll sign a deal. And so a lot of the work that I focus on now is on helping entrepreneurs kind of unlock, or what I say, activate this technology that's already inside of us. Because as entrepreneurs, we often get buried in our own idea, our own product. And sometimes we forget to focus on the other people, right? So we started off the show with what are the 5 steps to reach that first million. And you'll notice as you go back and listen to that, most of what I'm talking about is focused on identifying other people and their issues and the challenges they face. And in a similar manner, if you can learn to put that emphasis on connecting with the other person, less about what's in your own head, that gives you a really good head start towards crafting the right strategic relationship, for that context.
And what can we do in order to get better relationships, faster relationship for those one that are introvert? Because in business, you see there is always a fear when we are babies. Our parents are telling us, "Don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers, don't talk to strangers," and then we have this fear of public speaking, this fear, and after you are in business, and all you have to do is talk to strangers, so there is a barrier, and that can be a big challenge. I teach public speaking all over the world, and it's the biggest fear that human being can have because they're facing these barriers. So in mind, let's don't talk about one-to-many. Let's talk about one-to-one. It's an entrepreneur cannot go out there and be able to talk to strangers and build relationships. Literally cannot be in business.
Harry, you bring up a great point. And so much of our adult lives are spent unwinding those lessons that we internalized as kids, right? What parents forgot to tell us is that there's a time period during which don't talk to strangers might be helpful to us, right? Because they're doing it from a place of wanting us to stay safe. But as young kids, we don't understand that, okay, once we become adults, that's no longer relevant for us, right? So to your 5-step framework, I also have 5-step framework people can use thinking one-to-one in terms of how
Tell
to
us.
build a
That would be
relationship.
fantastic. Please share it with us.
And absolutely. And it's an acronym. The acronym is I sync, the letter I, and then SYNC. The I stands for intention. So whenever you enter into a conversation with someone, I always suggest a person before that meeting has an intention, an outcome for what they would like to get in that meeting. And this is not to be transactional, like I want to get something from this person. It's more to have an outcome of how you want that interaction to go, keeping in mind that you want it to advance both people's desires and the connection itself. So that's step one, is start with that intention. But then what I tell people is forget about the intention. Step two, which is S, is to shift your state. Whenever you enter an interaction, be it one-to-one or one-to-many, it's very important to start that interaction in a state that is going to, call it, create the right framework for that interaction. So oftentimes I suggest a kind of a calm and powerful state, a curious and playful state, depending on the situation that you may be in. And the reason why that's so important is all of our decisions in life are driven by emotion, all of them. And then we justify the decisions with logic. So we have a reason we can explain to ourselves, to our friends, to our spouses, to our colleagues, why we decided to do something. So step number 2 is always to shift that state into the state that's going to serve best the conversation that you're having. Step number 3, Y, is to yield your identity. Again, forget for a moment who you are or what you want, and just become a blank slate that can pay full attention to the person that you're with and to pay full attention to the conversation that you're having. Make sense? Then the next
Absolutely.
step,
Yeah.
the next step is N, which is to navigate the nervous system. So once you're in this interaction with this person and you've become a blank slate, yielded your identity, The next thing to do is really to pay attention deeply to that other person. Like, how would it feel to be in the other person's shoes, literally, or to be wearing the clothes that you're wearing? Or you want to basically give yourself and your nervous system the opportunity to become attuned to the other person very deeply. And what's fascinating there is when you do that, they will pick up on that. And you can create a literal connection between your nervous systems with the other person. And that connection is actually what we call being in sync. And then the last step is to create with coherence. Once you've got that bond, that connection with the other person that you're meeting with, together, let's go ahead and find what would be most beneficial for the both of us. And that's a framework that people can keep in mind, certainly for one-on-one conversations. It can also be used in one-to-many situations. And I encourage people, use it in business, use it with your kids, use it with your spouse. It's relevant everywhere because at the end of the day, we're just talking about how people communicate and get along with each other, right? And all business is people communicating and in relationship with one another with a certain end at the end of the day to exchange some kind of good or service or product.
So in the end of the day, people buy from people that they like and trust, and it is the nature of being an entrepreneur. You have a product that and you have to sell it. You have to offer it to the market, and there are often situations out there that people feel that they are selling so aggressively, and the problem that we see in this is that they haven't built the relationship yet, right? They haven't go to the likability, to the connection, to the trust, to, oh, I click with that person, could be client, right? And then they jump this, and then they say, well, how this product do you want to buy? And 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 then the conversion rate is really, really low because the relationship is not there. And when you meet the girl, you don't ask her to marry you straight away. You have to take her out to nurture that relationship. And after she trusts you, and some time has happened, then you will get married, right? So, uh, what tips do you have for entrepreneurs out there that they are struggling in the sales process because they are skipping this first step, which is build and nurture the relationship with the with the with the prospect, with the clients?
And that's such a big challenge that you've hit on, Harry. So I would encourage people to think of this process a little bit differently, maybe than they currently do. And I'm going to give the analogy of an internet connection. So our brains and bodies literally link up with one another, just like we connect to the internet service provider, and then we can do a Zoom call, we can send video or text to one another. And as what you're saying is, you're saying a lot of people skip actually the connection and they try to go ahead and send the email or the video to someone before they even have a way to do it. Right. And it really is that stark a difference. So if you sit down with someone and all you're thinking about is, I've got to sell this thing to them, you've kind of lost before you've started, right? Because the sales process itself is not about selling something to another person. Like, you don't have your widget and you need to get people to buy it. What you really need to do is to think the exact opposite and to think, what can I do to start to establish that layer of relationship first? And in the analogy, how can I create the internet connection first? And the brilliance of it is our brains and our bodies know how to do that. They want to do that. And it's more about getting out of our own way than it is about doing something new. And what I mean by that is, if you enter a conversation with a goal just to sell the other person, right? They pick up on that very quickly. right? It's almost as if before the conversation even starts or before the first words come out of your mouth, they're feeling, oh God, this person's trying to get something from me, right? It completely tanks
Mm.
that relationship. And I would say the people you mentioned, the entrepreneurs that are struggling with this process, they enter into these situations with that framework. And maybe it's because that's how they approach sales, or maybe they feel like I got to sell this to make my budget for the month. Or maybe they have felt uncomfortable in selling situations and think that that's what sales is all about. So if people could forget for a moment about needing to sell and really put 90% of the emphasis on starting to build the relationship, right? That is the foundation that has to be in place before you can do it. As you said, you want people to, number one, know you, right? So you got to be there. They know who you are. You want them to trust you, and you want them to like you. Now, I'll say something that might seem a little bit controversial. It might not. So trust does not take time. Trust takes connection. And if your brains and bodies are synchronized with another person, trust exists. So the biggest quote unquote hack for selling that you can do without trying to manipulate, without trying to sell, is to get very good at creating the connection and trust with people, because that will speed up the process. Like you mentioned, the kind of about meeting and dating and getting married. And of course, you're going to go out with someone several times, but we've been programmed from the time we were kids that trust takes time. And I disagree. Trust is actually an emotion, and it's an emotion that results from connection. So that would be the area I would tell the entrepreneurs and the people listening here to focus on first. It all comes down to that trust. And without it, the sale is not going to happen, or it may happen and then the person may come back and try to unwind it afterwards or request a refund, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it works in the other way. You want to qualify your client to see if you want to work with them, because I only talk and work with people that I like. And even in the this podcast, for example, that we're doing on a step of 5 step how to make the first million, we interview over 500 millionaires, and it's amazing, right? The give me the opportunity to meet amazing people like you. Okay. And I think that as entrepreneurs, we should create our environment with our employees, our clients, right? The people that we like and trust has to be in both sides, because not the fact that I don't want someone that buy any product from me and after give me headache. Because I don't want headache in my life. Do you understand? So you have to see if they actually qualify to buy the product or service that you're offering in the first place.
You hit on something so interesting, which is, what drives people to be entrepreneurs? Very often we want to be more in control over who we work with, how we work. But very often we forget to do what you just mentioned, and that is choose the people to work with that you really want to work with, right? If that
That you
resonance,
click, that you click
yes,
exactly, and your clients
if the
also, and your
click,
employees.
yeah,
If,
it's up to you, right? Like if you use that as one of your primary filters, you're going to have a much more enjoyable day, a much more enjoyable week, and a much more enjoyable business.
let's expand in the click, this click connection that you share. We have a few problems within the organizations, small, medium, and large organization, where we attract people to our organizations, to our employees, and then the employee, they have an amazing CV and a lot of skills. They clearly can do the job, but they don't click because the culture of the employee doesn't match the culture of the company. And that click, that trust, that set of values that that are embedded in the particular company clearly doesn't match the values of the employee, and it doesn't matter how good he can do his job. Eventually, that employee will feel uncomfortable in the organization, um, will will not perform at the highest level, and eventually will leave. And companies, organization lost thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions in training, in getting new people, and at the end of the day, that click doesn't happen, which is this alignment in cultures and values. So, how relationships for the people that are looking for our entrepreneurs that are looking to attract talent to the organization, how this technology that you teach can be applied?
Sure. And what you just mentioned, Terry, is I would say, number one most important thing when looking for new employees, right? People have in the past called it culture, right? And they haven't valued the importance of that enough, because I think culture is a kind of hazy term. It can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people to that. In terms of what I focus on nowadays and how that can help in the process, I would say it goes both ways, meaning if the employer, the entrepreneur, can get trained in these technologies around sync that I teach, they will do two things. One, they will have a very strong filter for who they want to work with. And they'll also be very finely attuned while they're meeting with the person to pick up on the signals to let them know, is it the right person or not? Our bodies are very sophisticated technologies. So if you meet someone and you really like them, your body knows that instantly. And if you meet someone and before they even say a word, sometimes your body picks up on something and says, there's something about this person, it's not the right fit for me. I would say to trust that. So that would be the biggest kind of bit of advice for entrepreneurs. Trust your gut instinct because it is right. It's very powerful. And the second thing that I often encourage people to do is to really spend time having conversations with people, ideally in person, that are unrelated to the work that's going to be done. So try to really have some conversations and get to know the person. And probably the best way to do that is to maybe do a trial project with a potential new employee, because a lot of people look great on paper, right? A lot of people can make a resume look fantastic, but it's very hard to tease out that cultural element on paper, right? So if they
That
can start
click
with a
in alignment, yeah.
very hard, right? So if you
Mm.
can start with a small project, like a 1 week, maybe a 2 week project with someone, and do the work so that you're day to day interacting and interfacing with the person, that will also give you a very powerful lens on that. And then the last piece of it, which might be a little bit of like a decoder module. So I've got something that I call the shift code. It stands for what you see, hear, feel, and think. And you can tell by the way a person speaks, by how they dress, by how they move, you can sense which of those four things are most important to them, what they see, hear, feel, or think. And different jobs have people that tend to flow into different areas. So if you're hiring a designer, chances are they might prioritize what they see. They're very visual. So I would say keep in mind when you are hiring, that there will be differences in people's preferences. So the entrepreneur and their company also has to be flexible, not to try to, let's say, pigeonhole people into what they consider to be a static culture, right? So that as I said, it goes both ways, right? The most important piece is to be aware of this as, I would say, your first criteria or filter. right? When people are looking for work, let's say to join a company, they often think in terms of industry, job function, size of company, and they have a criteria set up for what they're looking for. As an employer, I would highly suggest that you put connection and culture as your number one because you started this business for a reason. You want to build it over time as your legacy, right? Your baby, whatever that might be. And if you start bringing in people just based on their skill set, that could get diluted very quickly.
Yesterday I was seeing in Netflix a documentary that it said my friend the title is My Friend the Octopus, and
That's a great documentary.
oh yeah, won a lot of awards, and there is one of my favorite books that the name is The Chimp Paradox. Okay, whether humans or animals, if you see in the documentary My Friends and Octopus, that the beginning of the counter in building that relationship, okay, at the beginning is fear, right? This is this gonna be harm? Is this gonna this person really want to have a relationship with me, or is trying to have a relationship just there is no relationship he want to harm? Could be a shark, right? A shark doesn't want to have a relationship with an octopus, he want to eat the octopus. Okay, so as human beings we have this a, a brain, animal brain, that every time that we meet someone, the first reaction is this person is going to harm or not. So whether using somehow the octopus realize that the human is not going to harm, that can be approachable, and you can see in the documentary when you see several times he actually jump into the human and literally become his friend, which is pretty amazing. So
Yes.
it building and nurturing relationship, okay, but it takes time, and everybody want to save time, everybody want to build the relationship and quickly, because we want to sell our product, right? And it takes time, and if you don't take this time, it, it's gonna be complex to build a relationship, right? Of any time.
Yeah, and in this age of AI and in a world of, call it remote work, that can become even more challenging, right? And one of the things we've noticed, I'm sure you've noticed as well, is since people shifted to working online primarily, one thing has become very clear when we're on Zoom or Teams or something like that. One of the primary ways that humans connect with one another is through eye contact. And the challenge of these virtual platforms is that eye contact is almost completely disrupted. Like right now, when we're talking, right, I'm thinking, do I look at you in the eyes? Do I look at my camera? Right. And so this natural mechanism for building trust and connection and relationship has been disrupted. So as we move forward, we're going to have to seek other ways to build these relationships over time. And some of it will be through what we can do virtually, but I think you're going to see a big shift towards people getting back offline, people getting together in person, and people really wanting to have that face-to-face relationship. One, because of the interruption, let's say, of the last few years. But number two, we're only about maybe a year away at most that we won't be able to tell the difference between a real person on video and AI. And so that adds another whole layer of complexity, right? And so I think we're
Mhm.
going to see a very big drive towards people wanting to meet up in real life. And to the work that I'm doing, that will also drive a very strong desire for people to learn how to sense when they have a connection. Like your body knows it. We're going to have to become more aware of that feeling and sensation in the body. Otherwise, a lot of people are going to end up thinking they're building relationships when they're actually talking with some AI. So it's a very unique future,
Yeah,
right, coming at
yeah.
us right quickly.
So, and tell us how you become an entrepreneur. Do you have any family that they are entrepreneurs? Why you decided to become an entrepreneur and to teach this on the first place?
Yes, so I did. So my father was not only a university professor, but also an entrepreneur that built a sizable advertising business when I was a kid. So I grew up kind of working in that business and seeing the upsides, the downsides, the challenges, the joys of entrepreneurship. But I started working from a very young age. So I started working when I was 8 years old. And all of those things were entrepreneurial. At that time, I grew up in the Boston area. That meant a paper route, delivering newspapers at that time, then getting a job shoveling snow in the winters, and working at the local country club. And so I've always had a passion for being able to, with your own choice, your own effort, your own talent, solve a problem for other people and get rewarded for that.
And how come
So
you become passionate about this topic? What's the story?
yeah, so that I mean that was that early experience that got me hooked on entrepreneurship. And then as I moved kind of later on in life and started to work with my own and other startups, it's amazing to see that an idea can come out of your mind and start to impact people all around the world. There really nowadays no limits to what we're able to achieve. And that's exciting. That's exhilarating. I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, God, I really want to go to an office and have someone tell me what to do today. I don't think humans are really designed that way for most of us,
Absolutely. So
right?
so tell us about your startup and what was the industry that you built that startup and what was your biggest challenge growing your company and how you become that challenge?
Yes, well, I've done multiple ones. I'll tell you the current startup because I think that's the freshest of my mind. So, we're talking right now about interpersonal connection and human relationship. My current startup, I want to build a global technology company that solves the challenges in human connection and relationship for a few reasons. Over these last few years, we have been physically separated from one another, right? We were literally locked in homes in various places around the world. We are fed this constant diet that tries to make us angry at one another, right? Day in and day out. And the result of that is that we see relationships are fractured within families, within friend groups, certainly within societies. And now we see the rise of AI, which is making people afraid that their livelihood is going to be put at risk. What I see, I'm an optimist, and what I see is the bigger that AI grows, the more important human connection in our humanity becomes. I think the real superpower going forward is the ability to be human, to create connection, to interact with other people. So my current startup has a massive goal to try to solve the challenge of human connection globally. Now, the challenges in that is number one, people don't necessarily wake up and think, oh, I have a real challenge with how I connect and relate to other people, right? It's not a hair on fire problem, but over time, it will become that way. And companies are starting to wake up to that. And the big question I have, which you asked very graciously earlier about scalability, my big question that keeps me up at night is how can I embed this into technology so that people can access these kinds of skills and capabilities through their phones, their computers, their wearable devices, their headphones, their AR, their VR.
Mhm.
Like, so a lot of the challenge in this particular company that I'm scaling now is just figuring out what is the right way to introduce this kind of technology so that we don't have the challenge you mentioned in the sales process that if you go too fast, people kind of push back a little bit. You've got to build the relationship and build the comfort first, right?
Out of the 500 millionaires that we interview in this podcast, 1 out of 5 are tech entrepreneurs. So, do you think it's easy to become a millionaire as a tech entrepreneur? This is your first tech company. Do you have tech company before? What is the
So
good, the bad, and the ugly of being tech and become a tech millionaire? People listening to the podcast. This podcast is only for entrepreneurs and people want to be entrepreneurs. And they know about statistics and they listen to the podcast, they know that 1 out of 5 people that we interview, they are tech millionaires. So tell us what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of tech companies, and is it true that it's easy to become a millionaire being a tech entrepreneur, or it has some challenges?
So every business has its challenges, right? The results vary, as we always say. But I think what attracts people to technology, first of all, is we're using it every day in our life and we see how fast it's changing and how quickly it's growing. So naturally, there's a number of people that are just enamored with technology because we like to use it. Number two is the idea of scalability, right? Is that if we can find something that resonates with a certain audience, if we can use the right technologies, it has the capability to grow large and it can become global in that regard. So that I think is what attracts a lot of people specifically to the technology sector. Nothing is easy, and I don't take those statistics as being too important. Here's why. They don't capture really the effort that people put in and how much they treat their business as a business. So I would be willing to guess that the vast majority of those failures, as they're called in that data, probably have inside of that things that people didn't really give it their best shot, right? But having said that, entrepreneurship, it's a daily battle, right? You have an idea, you want to bring that into reality, nobody else really cares about your idea. And so the number one challenge I've seen people have is they come up with an idea and then they try to force fit it into the marketplace rather than solving a problem that people face and then finding other people that would like the solution to that same problem. I don't know if you've seen that in the people you've
100%.
interviewed or in your own
Yeah.
experience.
100%. Yeah. What we see in tech all the time is that a few things. Number one, the people, they rather than create the MVP, minimum viable product, what you just shared, they forget about the M, and they don't create the minimum viable product. They create the big elephant, they write a lot of code, and after, when they have this big elephant, it doesn't fit in the market. It's too big. It doesn't. They haven't even tried to to offer it to the marketplace, and the other challenge, and then they want to try to find a VC to give them money to see if someone want that elephant, and it doesn't. And it's a big gap between the founders and the money and the venture capitalist in that in or the angel investor in that space. So how can we close that bridge? What do you think is the problem? That because we have when you talk about money, there is a lot of money, but when you talk with the tech founder, they tell you, "Well, don't tell me anymore. There is a lot of money because every time that I go out to ask for money, nobody give it to me." And
So
so
yes,
the
Harry,
truth
you
is,
hit
there
on
is a lot
something.
of money, but just for the right company for the right entrepreneur. And the other part is those entrepreneurs that they are not quite there. Um, they won't find the fund. So how can we close this bridge? Get this bridge
Sure.
closed?
I'll make kind of one comment in terms of what you mentioned about VC kind of the industry. And then I'll tell people how they can close that bridge, which is exactly what I do in the work I do today. So number one is I would suggest any entrepreneur very quickly decide, is their business a VC fundable business or not? Right? Most businesses are not VC fundable. And what I mean by that is if you take outside investor capital, be it from friends and family, angels, or VCs, you are signing up for a specific development path for that business, right? There are time limits, there are hurdles you need to reach, and there's an expectation of how you're going to build and grow the business. And for certain businesses, it makes sense. For certain businesses, it doesn't. I think a lot of people have tried to go down that path when in their heart of hearts, they actually just wanted to build a business that they loved and do it at their own pace. And that creates a mismatch. So that's number one. Number two, more tactically though, if you are going in to raise capital from someone, you absolutely need to learn to create the sync before you walk in that room. I mean, that's exactly what I teach founders to do today. So all of the decisions the investors will make are emotional decisions. If you get in sync with that investor, you can then
100%.
share the emotional state that you want to share, and the other person feels that exact emotional state. And that's about 70% of the decision right there.
100%. Even if your numbers are beautiful, if the investor doesn't like you, doesn't trust you, they don't see in you, that connection doesn't happen, forget it. You're not going to get the money.
Exactly. And that's the biggest missing piece, in my opinion, in the fundraising market, is that we focus on the pitch deck. We focus on telling a story about the company, and we completely ignore the most important thing in the room, which is the human connection.
Yeah. So, wow, this conversation has been fascinating, Joshua. So, what advice do you have for people looking for funding, for entrepreneurs looking for funding, startup founders, how they can shift the paradigm? Because I agree with you 100%. There is all the focus is in the pitch deck, how fast you're going to make 1 billion with this company. And look, my numbers are beautiful, and we're gonna solve this problem that's gonna change the world, right? And they are so focused in on the founders, yeah, that they don't even know the story of the VC. If he has a similar business, if he exited business before, what's the story? Why he's listening to you in the first place? What getting attracted? What again? You also say is it's a contract, right? In order to grow a company in a specific pathway and in the specific path, and this has to it's like a marriage. Both people are gonna follow the same path, so they have to connect between themselves. And telling a pitch deck and putting numbers in the screen, the presentation, uh, it's all about the company. It's all about this, and that won't create a connection with the investor. So, what tips do you have for entrepreneurs pitching for funding? What question they can ask to the audience, or to the audience of the founders? How can they build this relationship while at the same time they're sharing, they're talking about the company, about the pitch deck?
Yeah, I would say, Harry, those two things at first I would keep completely separate, meaning as an entrepreneur, a lot of the work that you do is on yourself, what we call the inner work, right? So a lot of the work of the entrepreneur is about how they show up in the world, and they want to show up authentically, right, as who they are. And they want to share their vision for how this company they're building is going to solve problems, will change the world, whatever the type of company or outcome may be. So the biggest advice I have is for people to get very clear personally on really what they're trying to do here. Because to the sense that, imagine an investor walks in the room. I've listened to thousands of pitches, right? And the first thing you sense is this person performing for me? Or are they sharing something that authentically comes out of who they are and what they're trying to do in the world? And to the extent that a person can come in and authentically be solving a problem that's important to them, that is extremely powerful to the investor, right? We don't want to see a performance. We want to see the person really as themselves trying to make a dent in the world for that, right? So it's maybe kind of a unique answer in that I'm not going to give pitch advice. There's a whole industry around that. But I think the more important piece is what we call congruence, the alignment in the person's ideas, thoughts, behaviors, and communication. That when aligned properly goes a long way in building trust, in conveying the importance of what you're building. And if those things are aligned, then the pitch becomes more powerful because it's telling the story of something that's coming authentically from you.
So if someone is in love with our conversation, how people can find you, how this process works, can you share with us, please?
Absolutely. Yeah. They can, first of all, if they want to just directly email me, it's joshua@thesyncadvantage.com. And I'll give you this for the show notes, or joshuabernstein.com. And then they can also find me on LinkedIn. Again, Joshua Bernstein. And they can find me. I'll give you all of that information, to put into the show notes.
Thank you so much, Joshua. And for all of you following the broadcast, see you in our next episode of Unstoppable, how brave entrepreneurs like Joshua break that wall and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.